You're dialed in to Byron Velvick's Fish Tales. Real talk, real tactics, and the stories that make it all worthwhile. Byron Velvick's Fish Tales is brought to you by Livingston Lures, Trika Fishing, Mercury Outboards, and Camus Boats. Without further ado, here's Byron.
Another episode of Fish Tales. This is just getting started. And look who I have. Look at the smoking jacket. You know, it's so vintage, Ken Duke. Ken Duke is the guest on Fish Tales. Oh my gosh, you are the reason I have a podcast. It all starts with you, Ken.
That's hilarious, and I'll take it. I'll take credit for that, Byron, because this is exactly what you need. You are such a great conversationalist. You have so many wonderful stories to tell. You have a lot of great connections, both in the fishing industry and in just celebrities and other industries as well. You're the guy. I was absolutely right to tell you needed a podcast. I'm thrilled that you started it.
You were bugging me. This is the best part, Ken, is that you were like 2-3 years ago, you were like, you got to do a podcast. And you know, I had every excuse in the book, and your persistence, Ken, I got to thank you, because your persistence was, you know, keep on me about it until Livingston, Fred, the owner of Livingston, sits down last year, right after the elections. And he's like, Livingston needs to have a podcast, you know, a la Joe Rogan and Trump and everything we saw happen with podcasts. And it was kind of like that perfect marriage of everything you had you had said you need to be doing it. You got the personality, you know, try it. And Livingston anointed it, and here we are. Thank you, Livingston, for giving me the venue. And Ken, here I am because of Bass After Dark and all the things you've done. I'm forever indebted for you for this even happening.
Well, it's early to say indebted, because hopefully you love it, because you're really good at it, and that's not a question. You know, I knew from the we've known each other a long time now, and we've known each other before there was podcasting. And so it was just obvious once I got into podcasting, I'm thinking, man, I wish I had Byron's outgoing personality and magnetism. I wish I had Byron's stories to tell. That was easy. But
you had me on the show telling stories. Thank you for that. You let me have a voice on your podcast, Bass After Dark. I can't thank you enough.
Well, no, you're a wonderful guest on Bass After Dark, and we've got you scheduled already to be on about 37 more times. So we got lots of plans for you, Byron Velvick. But, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned I'm the one who goaded you into doing it, because, you know, I now have several podcasts that I do for different platforms like the National Professional Fishing League, and I've got Bass After Dark, and I'm still hoping to resurrect one called the Big Bass Podcast with Terry Battisti. And it took a friend to push me into doing it as well, Byron. And in my case, it was a couple of friends. It was Brian Stockle, Brian the Carpenter from Bass After Dark. And it was also our mutual friend, Edwin Evers. Edwin was always pushing me to do a podcast. And so finally I did it, and I love it. And I think I love it.
How long ago was that, Ken? When did you start podcasting? Like, when did you discover this medium?
We really didn't get it started until 2023, maybe.
Wow.
2022. But I had been pushed by those guys to do something like that for 5, 6, 8 years before.
Really?
I never did it.
So Brian the Carpenter and all those guys were like going podcast, like you did with me. It was 2-3 years of pushing before, you know, that this just happened within the last month here.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's because I'm more stubborn and less intelligent than you.
You got ahead of me on it. You're in the game earlier, and you got Bass After Dark, and you were doing the Big Bass Podcast with Terry Battisti, weren't you?
Yeah, we were doing, that was the first one I started, was the Big Bass Podcast with Terry Battisti, and that's kind of been on hiatus now for going on a year and a half. Terry got really busy with his work, but I do want to bring that one back because I really love that one too. And Brian the Carpenter I have been doing Bass After Dark with our other partner, Nathan Benson. Brian and I are kind of the guys on screen. Nathan's a partner, equal partner in everything with us, and he's the guy behind the scenes to do the engineering and the production stuff. And we've been doing that since November of 2023. And because I don't have the great personality, I don't have the contacts for the stories like Byron Velvick does.
Oh, you have! Oh my gosh, Ken, you are so sandbagging yourself right now.
I have to dress up like an idiot, Byron. That's the deal.
The smoking jacket. So how did you? I heard you talk a little bit, ICAST, and I stopped listening so we could talk about it on the podcast. How did this whole smoking jacket give me Bass After Dark, the philosophy and the
Wow.
smoking jacket, because I was hearing the story and I thought this is too good to hear on the floor at iCast. This is going to have to be podcast material for Fishtails.
You're too kind. Okay. Terry and I were doing the Big Bass podcast, and that's a lot of fun. It was kind of uncharted territory. Nobody was
No
going
smoking
back.
jacket on Big
No
Bass
smoking
podcast.
jacket. I'm just
Okay,
wearing whatever.
clarify.
And yeah, it was just a kind of an ordinary, my
Right.
usual dress code, t-shirt, whatever. And having a lot of fun with that. And that show is different because nobody was telling those old stories of trophy catches and state and world records and stuff like that. So that was what made that show different. And then I knew I wanted to work with Brian the Carpenter, Brian Stockle, on a show. And I said, how can we do something that's different? And I thought, well, nobody's doing like a late night talk show vibe. You've done every podcast in the bass world. I've done as a guest as every podcast in the bass world. And you're sitting there, you're fielding questions and you have a good time because you're usually talking with a friend and stuff like that. But I said, I don't really want to compete with my friends. I want to have something that's very different. And I also wanted to find a way to get Brian and Nathan working with me again on it. So I said, what if we have this late night talk show vibe? What if we bring on, instead of one guest and ask them 100 questions, we bring on 3 guests and ask them really just one question and try to take a deep dive into that, whether it's how to keep a bass alive or how do you fish vegetation or how do you fish a swim bait. And so I got Nathan and Brian to bite on that. And we were talking about how to give it that late night talk show vibe. And I said, well, okay, I'm going to come out dressed in a suit and tie and I'm going to deliver a monologue. And I said, but then I've got to do a costume change to do the interviews. And it was becoming way too big a hassle. And
So you were
so,
going to walk out like Jay Leno, suit, tie, do a whole stand-up monologue. I mean, Ken Duke was going to be the Jay Leno of Bass After Dark.
yes, something, well, not nearly that good, I'm sure, but something like that. Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
And that, uh, and that evolved into, okay, let's not do a costume change. Let's not do camera movement. Let's just do something more easy. And I said, well, what if I wear a smoking jacket and an ascot? Thinking that was stupid.
Right.
And because they are 2 of the 3 in the partnership, they outvoted me and said I have to wear a smoking jacket and an ascot.
You jokingly said it, and then they said, nope, that's it. You're actually going to be doing that, and it's majority rules.
I've got to go with the majority rule, man. I honor the democracy of it all.
What's the relationship between you and Brian? I've done 3 or 4 Bass After Darks now. I know you guys, but I don't know, again, and I'm glad we're not having this conversation off camera at a bar at iCast, but we're having it here for the listeners. What's the relationship between you? How did you meet him? I think he's involved. I know he has some background with Ike and Ellie, but
Yeah.
what's the source and the nucleus of you and Brian coming together?
Well, you're absolutely right about the connection with Mike Iaconelli. Brian and Mike have known each other since they were little kids. Got into fishing together, pre-teens, started their own bass club when they were teenagers.
Did
Top
they? So
line.
they grew up in the same neighborhood. They were neighbors,
Yeah,
neighborhood
well,
kids.
not neighbors, but they were close enough that they were in the same school
Okay, cool.
in that South Jersey area. And I got to know Brian through I was on Ike Live a time or two, and I got to
Mhm.
know Brian through that because he was the engineer and producer of Ike Live,
Okay.
and I enjoyed Ike Live as a show. And I mean, you've done Ike Live,
Mhm.
and I watched him on the show, and I thought, wow, what an interesting personality, what an interesting dynamic he creates. And here's a guy who's trying to herd cats.
Right, right.
And I thought, well, I really like Brian, and he and I became friends. And so I said, not only do I enjoy Brian as a friend because he's a really interesting, quirky guy, but I said I want to do a show with him. But I didn't want him as a producer engineer. We had Nathan. I had Nathan in mind for that, and Nathan. Nathan's a whiz.
So was Brian the carpenter? Was he engineering Ike, or was he just
Yeah.
he was engineering it? He wasn't a guest on it or a co-partner on it.
No, he was just the engineer.
Got it.
And
So he was Nathan. Got it.
yeah, yeah, and that came about because our friend Mark Jeffries convinced Ike that Ike needed a podcast. And so Mark flew up to New Jersey and set him up a studio. And because Ike trusts the people he grew up with and the people he's been friends with forever, he gave them all kind of roles in that mix. whether it was Pete Glusick as the co-host or Brian the Carpenter as the engineer and producer. That's how that whole thing came.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So that
So
was how it
anyway,
all started. That's the background, and then you became friends with him as engineer and invited him to be your co-host on the show.
exactly. And well, there would be no Bass After Dark if it weren't for Brian Stockle and Nathan Benson.
Mm,
Um, if I wasn't doing it with those guys, I don't think I could do the show I wanted to do at the
yeah.
time. Um, but
Now,
anyway,
now,
it's
so how
interesting
did
to me.
you and I work together? And I got to tell the story because it's a great one. And this is where it's nice to fill in the blanks. Is that, as you can recall, and you have a much better memory than I do, the Bassmaster Classics, and every other event that I was ever involved with, from a production standpoint, you were secretly saucing me with all kinds of great facts and tidbits, and then ESPN's like, where are you getting this from? Because I'd be doing the Bassmaster Classic with ESPN, and they're like, this guy's pulling some stats out of like thin air, vaporizing. So, oh, did you happen to know an interesting fact and great coincidence? And you were my Svengali. You were the puppeteer, and I had the strings in the back, but our relationship goes way back. And you have always been somebody who has been in the business and retained a crazy amount of knowledge and wisdom and memory of the stuff that's transpired in bass fishing.
Well, you're way too kind, and nobody needs to feed Byron Velvick talking points because the guy not only knows the history, but he's lived so much of the history of the sport. So, but you're way too kind to say
But
that.
I forgot most of it because I've done way too much alcohol and I did some drugs when I was young and it affected my brain. And you, sir, have everything working in that head of yours. And mine is like, I can't remember anything. You tell me stories. I'm like, oh my gosh, that did happen, Ken. Oh, I do remember that, Ken. And you're like, where were you, Byron? I mean, this is all part of your life.
Well, well, thank you. I really love the history of the sport. I got into it like everybody else did. I like catching them. I love catching bass and figuring out what's going to work and what's going to catch them and stuff like that. But then I got to realize, hey, there's a history to this sport, and there's a bunch of great personalities in the sport. And I feel like I came along. Well, you and I both came along at a great time where we got to know the Ray Scotts and the Tom Manns and the Larry Nixons and Bill Dances and Roland Martins and Rick Cluns. And now we're meeting this whole new generation of superstars in the sport, the Drew Gills, the Van Dams, the Wheelers, all these people. So I feel like you and I have come into the sport at an interesting bridge,
When
and
did you come
I
into
love
it,
that.
Ken? When did you come into the sport, and how exactly did you fish tournaments? And again, I don't know any of this thing about you. Like, this is the past history of how did Ken Duke get into bass fishing?
I'd love to tell you that, like my friend Fat Cat Newton, I won two Bassmaster Classics in June of 1987, but I can't claim that. No, I got into it like everybody else, except maybe a little different. I grew up in Miami at fishing the canals in Miami for bass, and then as a kid, my family moved to South Carolina. I grew up on a farm in South Carolina. We had a pond that had bass, and um, and then as I got older, I got into clubs and fish club tournaments, and you know Saturday pot tournaments and stuff like that, like everybody else. I fished hundreds of those kind of derbies. I've never fished a major tournament as a boater. I fished some as a co-angler.
Hmm.
Uh, but and then when I was in high school, I was reading every bass fishing magazine I could get my hands on. I joined BASS when I was 14, and reading everything I could get my hands on.
Were you
And whenever
smart enough? Were you smart enough to do the $100 lifetime membership that I did not do back in the day when Bass offered $100 for a lifetime membership when we were 13 or 14 or 15?
no, I wasn't that smart, and I didn't have that much money.
I didn't do it either, and I wish I had best $100 I'd have ever spent.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But
I
I
I
offered it
found
back then. Go ahead. I
well,
digress, but I had to know if you were a life member for a
I'm
hundred
a
bucks, like so many
I'm a
people.
I'm a double life member, but I'll get to
Wow.
that in a moment.
Ooh.
That's right. There aren't many of us.
So if
Um,
you die and then you are reincarnated,
oh
you get your membership back. So
yeah,
it's a double life membership. If they bury you and then you reincarnate and you can prove you were Ken Duke, they will reinstate your Bassmaster membership.
I'm really hoping it just means I live twice as long, but whatever. Uh, so so anyway, every time you get an assignment in your high school English class, they want you to write about something, and so all I cared about was bass fishing and playing sports, and so I'd write about bass fishing. And I got to thinking, man, maybe I could write one of these stories like I read in the magazines. And I tried it when I was 18, and I sold it. I sold a story when I was 18 to a national magazine, and
A fishing magazine? You sold a story at 18?
yeah,
Still in high school. Wow.
yeah, and that was, you know,
You were like, I get paid for this.
shook up
I
my
get paid to write
I got
it.
paid for it, and it was that shook up my world.
Right.
Um, and so while other kids are, flipping burgers or waiting tables when they're trying to get their way through college or whatever, I'm selling magazine articles.
So
And
that one quickly turned into many more. It wasn't like just a
yeah,
one-off and you were like, wow, I got paid. This is great. Suddenly that became a very fast money-making career for you at a young age.
exactly,
Wow,
exactly.
Ken, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so I'm selling as many as I can, and it was easy. There were a lot more magazines then, though, as you recall.
Right.
But even
And they were
so,
hungry for probably great content. Like you were giving good content. It didn't reek of bad writing, which you and I both remember. There was a lot of bad writing back then.
there's a lot of bad writing out there, and I don't know that my writing was great or anything, but it was good enough, and it
Yeah.
kept me encouraged, so I kept doing it. And but then when I was young, I made a decision I'm not very proud of. I went to law school, and that took me off the track of working in the fishing industry for a long time.
hmm
Uh, didn't have enough time to keep the writing stuff going. Did it
So you
very
went to law
rarely.
school, passed the bar, became a what kind of lawyer? What kind of law did you do?
Mostly divorce.
Wow. Ooh, you went into the ugly world of family law.
The ugly world of family law. Yes, sir. You are spot on about that, man.
I am
Uh,
so sorry about that.
yeah, divorce lawyer, you think about people going through that. People are going through maybe the ugliest time of their life, and the divorce lawyer has to help them navigate that. It was not a lot of fun.
I heard a quote, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. I don't know, you probably heard this before, but my lawyer, and maybe it was just a standing thing that family lawyers said to each other, divorce lawyers. But he said, Byron, he said, in my job, criminal law is bad people on their very best behavior in the courtroom. He goes,
Yes.
unfortunately, my job is very people with great behavior being the very worst. And I forgot exactly how he said it. He goes, but unfortunately, in family law, it's good people at their very worst versus bad people at their very best. The difference between
Well put.
criminal and family,
I never heard that, but that's a genius statement.
right?
One quote I did tell people a lot was quote from Mark Twain. Mark Twain said, "I am in favor of divorce because it prevents murder."
Yeah,
And I'm sure that's true. But yeah, you see people at their darkest time, and they all tell the same story,
yeah.
which is kind of hilarious. They all say, "Oh, if you met my husband," or "Oh, if you met my wife, you'd think they were the greatest person in the world.
hmm
I can't stand them," and then,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah.
So you were in family law, and unfortunately, that was probably burning on you pretty hard, pretty quick to stand up in that courtroom and do that stuff. That I can't imagine doing family law. I can't.
No, it's as I say, it's not a lot of fun. You do see people at their worst, and you see people on some level quite often at their neediest.
hmm
Sometimes these people are in danger. Sometimes their husband or wife is a physical threat to them, and that's awful. And sometimes they're an incredible emotional drain on them, and that can be almost as bad. And sometimes these people think that through the divorce process, they're going to get revenge. And it just doesn't work that way. A courtroom is a pretty lousy place to get revenge.
Right.
Doesn't work out very well. So,
How long did you do it before you finally threw in the towel and said, "I can't do this anymore"? Because I can't imagine. I was going to go to law school myself, and that's the one law I would have absolutely stayed away from just because of what I've seen and then what I endured myself.
yeah. Well, I practiced 10 years.
10 years.
So 3 years law school and 10 years of practicing law, and and
Were you
I
still fishing?
not nearly as much as I wanted to. Yeah, I was
Was
still
bass fishing
fishing.
like completely off the back burner by then? Were you so caught up in the whole law thing that you didn't get time to go fishing?
Well, you made the statement that you were going to go to law school, but you were going to stay away from family law. The reason I got into family law, I didn't even take the class in law school. Didn't even take the class. But when I got out of law school and I worked for a firm for a little while to kind of get my feet under me and learn some things, then some guys I went to school with and we created our own firm. And what I realized was, hey, family law is something you can market. You can actually do seminars and people will flock to your seminars. So we were marketing our own business and it was very effective. Um, but uh, to your
So you're giving
question, yeah,
seminars and marketing family law, like you're actually, what's the draw? Like if you're lawyers and you're offering seminars, what's the draw on that?
we'd put an ad in the paper saying, "Hey, come here on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, and for 3 hours we will sit down and tell you everything you need to know about divorce. We're going to
Oh,
talk to you about custody, support, visitation. We're going to talk about division of property. We're going to talk about alimony, all the issues you would face in a family law scenario. We're going to answer all your questions, and it's free. And we could fill a room with 75 or 100 people.
oh wow.
And
I can see the value in that. Yeah.
yeah, well, what was hilarious and awkward was sometimes the husband would sneak out of the house and say, "Hey, I'm gonna go play
Don't
tennis, blah
tell
blah
me.
blah." And the wife would say, "Yeah, I'm gonna go have lunch with Becky Sue," and then they would show up in the same room.
No, that's not. Then they'd both be at the seminar looking across from each other.
Yep.
Oh,
But
that's like a bad version of that song. You know, if you like pina coladas, they end up in the bar if they put out the personal ads, except it's
exactly,
the opposite. It's
it
instead of
is.
them re-hooking up, like if you like pina coladas and, you know, I had no idea that you like this and champagne, but you're just the opposite. I didn't know you wanted a divorce. I didn't know you wanted a divorce. We showed up at the same seminar and did it turn into a fisticuffs?
Usually it was kind of a good revelation. Yeah, hey, we are on the same page here. We both won out.
We
Let's
both can't hire you. That's the thing.
well
Who's gonna
that's the
hire
thing
Ken
too.
Duke
Yeah,
first?
exactly. Um, but yeah, for anybody who's interested in the song Byron's referencing, Rupert Holmes.
Thank you.
Rupert Holmes.
And is it called Pina Coladas? I mean, see, I knew you'd know the artist.
Yeah, I think it's called the Pina Colada song.
So
I
you
don't
want to
know
hear a fun
which
fact,
version I
Kendrick?
know that. Yes, I'd love to hear a fun
I
fact.
know you don't know this one.
Uh-oh.
I watched him sing that on American Bandstand when I danced on American Bandstand when Dick Clark hosted American Bandstand. True story. I
Oh
got to
my
see
God.
him. I got to see him sing that because for a moment in time, my buddy who was we were in California, and his uncle was a camera guy for American Bandstand back when Dick Clark was still hosting it, and so he would let us come on the weekends, and we would shoot all these episodes. Sheena Easton was there. The guy that sang. God, there were so many artists, but the ones I remember watching them sing, Jay Giles band was there, you know, and all the different bands, and the Key Largo is sailing away on Key Largo. I know you know that
Bernie
song.
Higgins.
Bernie Higgins was on that on one of
Bernie
the
Higgins.
episodes. The
Yeah.
guy you just mentioned. So the songs are ingrained in my mind because I sat next to Dick Clark and watched, you know, him introduce the artist, and my mom used to videotape it, and I did Dick Clark American Bandstands and saw him
I had
perform
no
that lip
idea.
syncing. Of course, I know you didn't do that one.
Yeah, that's very, very bizarre and strangely cool.
Back to college though, but so you're over there.
Awesome.
I've transitioned all the way out of my stuff, but you're over there in this room with all these people, and you're giving seminars on family law. And go on.
Yeah, just trying to generate clients and I actually enjoyed doing the seminars, but I hated representing the clients and watching people fight over mops and brooms and
So how
stupid.
do you get so how do you transition from family law to the icon of bass fishing that you are now?
Hardly an icon, but I am.
You are
Well,
such an
I started.
icon. The,
No, no, just that it's the
it's
smoking
not the
jacket.
jacket. It's much
Uh,
more than the jacket.
but I
The
said,
man makes
okay,
the clothes. The clothes do not make the man.
I think it might be different in my case, Byron. Might be different here.
Oh no,
Uh,
Ken. You cut a big swath. But go on, how did it start for you in fishing? Like obviously you were able to take that law stuff out of the equation and still make a good living in bass fishing, which is everybody's dream come true, really.
yeah, I was able to do that to greater or lesser success, but I started reaching out to some of the publications that I had sold stories to through the years, and I started to try to find out if, hey, have you got any openings for an editor? And because I knew you can really struggle as a full-time freelance writer. that's a tough way to make a go of it because you're constantly trying to peddle your stories here and there, and it's all about the relationship you have with that editor. And so I wanted to be the editor, so I knew I would have a steady income and stuff like that. And I got to thinking, oh, what else could I do? Could I maybe guide? Could I learn taxidermy? What can I do to kind of
Really?
keep me? Oh yeah,
You're thinking
yeah.
about taxidermy, guiding, like all the different other facets besides being the editor of a magazine.
Well, no, besides being a lawyer,
Okay.
I was looking to cobble anything together. Oh, could I pour soft plastics in my
No
garage?
way.
Oh, whatever. I'm looking to do whatever. And yeah, uh and I wound up getting a job as an editor with the Game and Fish magazines. And and from there I went to BASS and then to Fishing Tackle Retailer magazine and so on. So I was able to keep
So it
jobs in
started
the
with Game and Fish, and how old were you when this? Like, when did you quit being a lawyer? What age were you when you walked away and started cobbling fishing together?
I was about 35.
35.
Yeah. Now I'd always stayed in it a little bit. I mean, I've been kind of continuously involved in the fishing industry since I was 18,
Hmm.
which is now, wow, depressingly long time ago. 45 years.
45 years.
Years, yeah.
Wow.
And just, you know, edit, write, now podcast. I've had a radio show before. I've done a little bit of television, fishing stuff. I've run tournaments. Um, I fished a lot of, little nickel and dime tournaments and love it.
What's been your favorite thing in the business of all the stuff that you've done, which is a lot? What's been your most enjoyable thing?
I tell you, I really love the podcasting and radio stuff. And I love writing stories. So it's hard for me to answer that, but I like writing, and what I've tried to create for myself is a niche where I write the stories that other guys either are not interested in writing or they don't have the background to write, the history stuff, maybe some stuff about numbers in fishing and things like that either nobody else wants to write or nobody else is willing to do the research to write.
Yeah, you've actually got a passion for the world record bass that I've
Oh my
learned.
gosh.
And
It's,
you have touched on it a couple of times, but I didn't realize it ran so big and so deep. And it's like the world record bass is something that is strong in your wheelhouse. And I really am looking forward to you explaining that to me now because I do not know the attraction.
Well, thank you for asking that question because the world record bass is a big deal to me and always has
It's a
been.
huge deal. You've touched on it so many times, but I'm like, there's a bigger story, Ken. And Brian mentions it. You guys spar about it, and I watched it, and I'm like, I'm missing something here. And I know Brian's cutting you off, and there's guests in this Bass After Dark, but this is your platform to tell me and the people watching. Let's talk about this world record bass thing, Ken.
Well, one of the first things I ever read in a bass fishing magazine, my dad found a copy of Bassmaster magazine when he was on a business trip and brought it home to me, and that was the most eye-opening thing in the world. Here's a magazine just about bass fishing. Surely life does not get better than this. And I was about 13. And
Except for
and
Playboys. Well, Playboys were a close second.
there you go. Yeah,
There's a
absolutely.
Playboy and that because I was 13 and I love my fishing magazines, but then there was that also, Heather Locklear, Penny Berryman. Remember Penny Berryman?
I do.
Penny Berryman with Man's Vegas. She was like the Heather Locklear of bass fishing. That was where at mixed where you're like, oh my God, there's like a Heather Locklear of bass fishing in my bass fishing magazine, which crosses over to my other magazines that I found in my dad's closet.
Yeah, but Dad wasn't bringing those magazines home to me, strangely.
He
Uh,
kept those away. He handed
just
you a
because
Bassmaster.
of the
So you
machines.
get a Bassmaster from your dad.
And there's an article in it about George Perry and the world record bass.
Hmm.
And and oh my God, they get to be 22 pounds, 4 ounces. That was amazing. And
Hmm.
so, now I'm reading everything I can about the world record. And the more I read about it, the more I think, this is not, this seems maybe not real. Maybe I can't
Right.
trust these stories. And so the more and more research I do, I mean, I went to the University of Georgia, so I was living in Georgia for a long time, and that's where Perry allegedly caught the world record in 1932. And I said, I'm taking a couple of days. I'm going to drive down to the little town where he weighed this fish in, and the river where he caught this fish, and I'm gonna do a deep dive here, and I'm I'm looking into the newspaper reports from 1932.
Really? You
Oh
went
yeah,
there? Like you went to the little town and to the river where it all happened?
McRae and Helena, Georgia.
Oh, this is
Absolutely.
great. Okay.
And I'm thinking, oh, this is bullshit. There's no way. And, and the more I dig into it, the more I think it's
So
garbage.
what happened? What's this what's your philosophy? What's your theory about what happened? What did George do? Was it the great hoax of the 1930s?
Well, in the world of fishing, it certainly was. But I mean, in a nutshell, what I think it it's the Great Depression. It's 1932. George Perry is a 20-year-old farmer in extremely remote South Georgia. His dad died the year before. He is now the man of the house. He and his siblings are trying to feed the family. And Field and Stream's got a contest, and their contest is going to give him $100 worth of outdoor stuff, shotgun, a tackle box, a rod and reel. It doesn't sound like a lot in today's money, but if you go to 1932 dollars and adjust them for now, it's about $1,500 worth of stuff.
Okay.
That is not inconsiderable,
No?
especially during the Great Depression.
Right. It's
So
a big carrot that's being dangled right there.
major carrot at that
Right.
point. And
Right.
so I think he faked it. Um, it. I don't think it was hard for him to find a guy to claim that this fish was caught. I think they went to a little general store or a post office. Stories conflict as to whether he had the fish weighed at a post office or a general store. Uh, People signed on as witnesses, and he submitted it. Maybe he just faked it.
Was it he had like a 10-pound bass and he said it was 22 pounds? I mean, the pictures, did he just come in with a good sized fish and try to pitch it as a world record, or what was that?
I don't know, but you know what? If you're going to fake it, why do you need a fish at all? You know,
Wow.
you don't need a fish at all if you're going to fake it, right? There are no pictures of this fish. I know a lot of folks listening to your show are going to say, "Oh yeah, I've seen some pictures of the fish." No, those are not pictures of the fish. One where you see the guy wearing the hat and he's kind of crouching and holding a fish, that is an ugly Photoshop job of something. And
I've
the other,
seen that. I know which picture. I can, in my mind, I can see what you're talking about. Yeah, there's that
yeah,
black and white picture of a guy crouching holding a fish.
that's just an
Yeah.
ugly Photoshop job with some sepia tone. And the
Okay.
other one is a guy holding a big fish and he's smoking a cigarette and there's a little baby standing next to him.
Oh, I haven't seen that one, I don't think. Ah,
None of the
that's.
Perry family ever said that was, everybody agrees that ain't George.
Oh my
And
gosh.
everybody, a lot of people want to say, oh, that's behind the post office in Helena, Georgia, because those two palmetto bushes are there. Well, whatever, but that doesn't tell us what that fish weighs, and it doesn't tell us that's the same fish George Perry claimed.
Wow.
But there's a million reasons why I don't believe in that fish. I believe he was motivated to lie and cheat. I believe that the second biggest fish ever caught in the state of Georgia weighed 18 pounds 1 ounce.
Uh-huh.
In no other state is there a 4 pound gap between number one and number two.
Wow.
No other state.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just a lot of garbage.
I can't even believe 18 pounds in Georgia. You just not Georgia. You don't think of that as being a hub for world record, but again, it's different species back then. As you know, it was a different time, and there was purebred Florida and purebred everything else, northern strain, and all that stuff.
Right. And you know the biological circumstances of the sport of bass fishing right now are so much up in the air, but Georgia does have pure Florida strain bass in that region. But
Hmm.
I have a hard time believing that there should be a 4 pound gap between the biggest and the second biggest fish in Florida. Um, I have a hard time. Well, here's another problem I have. So George and his buddy Jack Page allegedly went fishing that day, June 2nd, 1932. It was a Thursday, by the way, Byron. And they claimed they were out there with one rod and reel and one lure. And they're trying to put food on the table. Who doesn't at least have a cane pole and some crickets or some night crawlers?
Right,
They're trying to put
right.
food on the table and they're throwing a what amounts to an early crankbait.
One hard bait, a
No
dumb
way.
little wobbler bait. Yeah.
Exactly. That didn't happen. That
Wow,
didn't
that's a
happen.
good point. That goes against the grain of what would be happening in the Depression, which is you're fishing for dinner. Like you better
Exactly.
take everything you got, throw the kitchen sink out there, have a catfish rod out there, a bluegill rod out there. Oh, by the way, I'll throw this lure out there with, while I'm waiting for the catfish to bite. But I hear what you're saying. That
Yeah, that's
makes
spot on what you're saying. They're fishing for meat.
right. It's
And,
dinner
and it,
time.
yeah,
People did back then, it was catch and grease, not catch and release. There was no catch and release. It was all catch and grease.
catch and grease, catch, batter, and fry.
That's
But
it, man.
yeah, so this is just garbage.
So really, there really was no, in your opinion, in your professional opinion, because it's you've studied the heck out of it, there really was no world record, and all those 20s and 21s that were getting caught in California were probably dancing with the world record with Ray Easley catching that big one at Casitas. I remember that on the crawfish, and Dave
Yeah,
Zimmerly catching that giant one at Miramar. I think it was Miramar Lake. I was a kid back then. I was
yeah.
living around those lakes. That was long before Mike Long and Dottie and all that other stuff. It was when those Magnum trout eaters were out there,
Yeah,
and what?
you were at ground zero. You were at the perfect place.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was too stupid to go fish for them. I was a tournament fisherman like you. I was 16 years old and I went fishing one day and I had a decent day and I got a check. And just like you with your first article, I'm like, wait a minute, I had a great day fishing. And then they hand me a check at the end. And while you're out there fishing, you forget that there's money involved. That's when you know you're loving the sport because you forget all about it. Then at the end, they give you this little trophy kind of thing and they go, here you go, kid. And here's a check for, $180 for finishing 16th. And you're like, $180? And I went fishing today? Like this, sign me up for the rest of this. How fast can I sign on with this?
Oh yeah, it's addictive,
It
and
is.
it's not necessarily a great career choice to be either a bass rider or a bass tournament guy, but it sure is a lot of fun on good
So
days.
what's the true world record now? What's your take on the world record bass? I mean, so that George Perry thing, I know that's in your mind, that's completely debunked, and the world record's up for grabs. So were those 20s and 21s that I'm talking about? Were they really basically world records that were being caught but they were being pressed up against George Perry's hoax?
I think that's exactly right, and I think that's the really ugly part of Perry's lie is that these guys never got Dave Zimmerly in 1973 with that 20-pound, 15-ounce fish out of Miramar. He was never given his due for catching what should have been the world record.
Hmm.
Ray Easley, um, Bob Crupi, those
Bob
guys
Crupi,
never.
yeah, I remember
They
Crupi.
had the world record, but they
Right.
didn't because of Perry. And let's put a monetary value on it because as you remember, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a thing called the Big Bass Record Club.
Hmm.
And at one point, their bounty on the world record reached $8 million. George Perry cost somebody $8 million.
Wow, I never thought of that. George Perry's hoax, if you will, cost somebody $8 million because they were legitimately setting world records, and
Yeah,
they would, you're up against this iconic 1932 Bassmaster World Record.
exactly right. And what a shame.
Wow.
Uh, and Perry didn't think he had a world record because when Perry submitted that fish, the world record was 24 pounds.
Hmm.
Also a fraud from Alabama that
Hmm.
got discovered. And so Perry was put in as the world record in 1934, 2 years after his catch. I think that's also telling. I think Perry wanted to win the contest, but he didn't want to get so much scrutiny by claiming the biggest bass ever caught.
So there
So
was
he
a
submitted,
standing 20, there was a standing world record of 24 pounds in 1932.
caught in 1926. Yes.
So if you lived in 1932 and you're George Perry, in your mind, the world record is 24 pounds caught even before that.
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that at all. And that was
Yeah.
a fraud in in Alabama, you said?
Yeah. Tennessee Tombigbee Waterway, 24 pounder. It was
You're
a
kidding
striper.
me.
Wow.
No
It
way.
was a striper.
Oh my God, Ken, I love this. See, I didn't know any of this. Didn't know any of this.
It's obscure stuff that only lives in here. Most of this is parking, as you know, Byron, because we've known each other a long time. Mostly parking.
No, you know what it is? For me, it's like a toll booth. I go in there and I get all you got the receipts, man. I go there and I get the receipts from you, and it's like, hey, while you're on camera tonight, make sure you tell them that at this day, this time, this many years ago, this exact same thing happened. And I'm telling you, Ken, all of my brilliant aha moments on ESPN were like, "Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken." But I wasn't giving up my. Watergate had a deep throat. The guy that was giving all the juice at Watergate, and you were my Watergate. You were a deep throat over there at Bassmaster, just quietly whispering in the parking structure about all the cool facts that would make me look like a rock star on camera, and blow away the ESPN brass.
No, you did not. You did not need any
I
assistance from me.
did. I needed all of it.
People must know that Byron Velvick is one of the brightest, most well-read, most articulate, most analytical guys in the sport, hands down.
I don't know about any of that.
Philosophy
I
student.
beg to differ. I got a bunch of your viewers right now. If there was a live chat, we'd be in trouble. I'm so glad this is pre-recorded, and it's not like Bass After Dark where all of a sudden you watch everybody just start roasting me.
Yeah, over on
The
Bass After Dark,
trolls.
we incentivize people to say mean things, but only about the hosts, me and Brian, and
Oh, I
try
love
to keep
Bass After
things straight and
Dark. I
narrow.
love watching
Well,
it. I love being
I
on the
love having you
show.
on.
What's that? Yeah, I really do. I enjoy it. So you go into Bassmaster. You worked at Bassmaster. You worked everywhere else. Um, it's that time. I'm gonna, and you knew this existed because you helped me foster this. But Ken Duke, it's time for that segment on the show, the one that got away, and it
Oh
doesn't
man.
need to be. And you knew this was coming because you wrote the playbook on this stuff with me. The one that got away, Ken Duke.
The memory still haunts him. He lost by 2 ounces.
For me, and I did know this question was coming, so I've been thinking about it ever since you asked me to be on the show with you. And by the way, it's an honor to be on Fishtails with Byron Velvick. Been thinking about it, and it's not a fish, and it's not a girl, because I got the girl of my dreams. Um,
And if you
it's
said another girl, that girl of your dreams might not be the girl of your dreams after this
oh,
podcast
she,
there. So smart on you not to say it was a girl.
strangled me with the ascot. Um, she's the one who gets me dressed for the show. But it's lost opportunities. And for me, I think of lost time as the one that got away. And I feel like on a big level, I lost a lot of years going to law school and practicing law when I could have been working in the fishing industry and maybe finding a better path for myself, doing more things, writing more books, getting started in podcasting earlier. You and I could have been kind of on the ground floor of the fishing podcast world, and we'd
Hmm.
be maybe further along than we are
Hmm.
now. And so I think of those kind of things as the ones that got away.
Lost
Those are the
time.
ones
That's a
that
good
haunt
one.
me. Lost time. That's what, because you and I I'm a little bit older than you, but we're the same generation. And as we get older, that's what I think about. I think, damn, I lost that opportunity and I don't get it back. I rarely think to myself, oh, it's too late to do something, but I do regret the loss of the time and where I might be without it.
Interesting. Like Rick Clunn said, when we've always talked to him. He talked notoriously about how the last chapter of his life hasn't been written yet. And to your point, none of our last chapters have been written yet because things are happening. They're new. They're different. Bass After Dark is, you're going to come back with Big Bass podcast with Terry possibly, and so and I got this thing. So our chapters are still being written, but I like that. It's the lost time of that bandwidth, especially from 25 to 35 when you were knee deep in law.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Now, I hope I'm not out of line here, but can I ask you about your one that got away?
Oh, I don't. I never. Wait a minute. No,
I
because it's my show.
Yeah, I know, but you made me get dressed like this, and when I dress like this, I'm usually the one asking the
Oh, I
questions.
didn't even
So
expect that.
this
Oh,
this episode of Fishtails is going to be famous because it's the one where the guest turned the tables and asked you that question. And as you said,
oh
you're kind of
no.
the guy who said, "Hey, this is a great question you can always ask."
I think we can edit this part out because I don't
No, no,
even.
no.
Oh, I
Well,
can't edit. I
okay.
can't edit. I don't have the engineer like you have. So it's raw. It's streaming. The one that got away. Hmm. That's a tough one for me. I wouldn't be lost. What did I, what, that's a great question. I've asked the question, I've had great answers, but now I got to think about which one gets me.
Well, it is a
Oh,
question that deserves a lot of thought. So maybe this episode is not the one where you answer it, but I hope you'll spend some time thinking about it because that's what it took for me to think about it for a while. It's not an
Okay,
easy
good deal.
question.
Because I'm going to have you on more than once. You're going to be a reoccurring guest. We got to do this again, and when we do, I won't answer that question until I do it with you.
Oh,
Fair enough.
that honored. I would be honored, sir.
I'll bank it and I'll say, no, that's saved for when Ken Duke and I do the next podcast because I think we've already been going an hour and I feel bad, but I do have one more story, which is a much easier one for me to answer if you asked me. But, and again, we don't have the graphics yet because we're just doing this, but you did a lot of fishing, the best, worst hook story. That's the other segment that I'm dying to hear because I want to know in all the time you've been fishing, what's your best, worst hook story? And I do know which one I have.
Okay, my best worst hook story. I was in high school, living on a farm in South Carolina, and there was this kid at school in my class. Cannot even remember his name, but he wanted to go bass fishing, and I said, "Okay, come on out to our place. We'll go bass fishing." We had a 12-foot Sears John boat and a 12-volt, 12-pound thrust Minn Kota trolling motor. Okay, and a little pond that's about acre and a half, 2 acres. And we launched the boat, and we're there, and he's making these sidearm casts, which are dangerous in a 12-foot John boat. He's in the
Yeah.
bow, I'm in the stern steering the boat, the tiller trolling motor, and and
So
he
he's
takes
just
my hat
firing.
off.
He's just
He's just
letting it rip.
firing, yeah. Well, they're pistol grips back then, remember, Byron? So it's one-handed.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, yes, yes.
And he's making these casts, and he takes my cap off with one of them. Just, and I had a lot of hair then. I had Byron Velvick,
A
luxurious
much
hair.
younger Byron Velvick hair. This is gone now. This is just visor hiding it. Go ahead.
And he takes my hat off, and I said, "Dude, watch it." And I swear, so he pulls my hat in because he's got a hook in it. The next cast hits me in the head again, only this time the hat doesn't fly off because the hook's embedded in the back of my skull.
Oh no.
And
With the
he
hat
didn't know
on? I mean, you saw that you had the hat on and the hook went through the hat into your
what went
skull?
through the hat into my head.
Oh.
And I said, "That's it, you're done." And I took the boat back to the bank and I said, "Get the hook out of me." And he just took a pair of pliers and yanked it out of me. We didn't know the hook trick then. It
Right.
was a bait with a treble though. And that's my best worst hook story.
It's a good one. That's a good one.
Should
Yeah.
have never taken that kid fishing.
Nope. Nope. Oh
But
my gosh.
I know
Well,
you and I have both been fishing with guys who didn't know what they were doing and were freaking dangerous.
yes. So my worst hook story was we were filming an episode, and it was, and I can't even remember if it was Going Coastal on ESPN or if it was through the eyes of the guide's eyes on with JM and Associates, but either way we were at Hilton Head. We were on the beach at Hilton Head. I was the guy standing there, and I was simply I watched our one of our guides take we were fishing for sharks, so we're fishing the surf for sharks. We're using poppers with very large single hooks on them, very very large single hooks, and you're in the surf and you're taking hard shots to throw out there to catch these small sharks at Hilton Head in September, and popping those poppers, and the guide wound up sideways and took a sideways shot like you're talking about, and we had this big tall camera guy kid. He was a Norwegian kid, and he took it right to the temple. So it hit him right in the side of the head to the temple, Ken. And it's a giant shark hook with a popper on it. It's hanging off of the side of his head, and it's right in the sweet spot, right there in the part that could possibly kill you. And this kid went buckled and went to his knees with a camera on his shoulder, and he was big, strong young kid, but he's like freaking out obviously because he can feel it, and he grabs the popper and he can feel it's embedded in there. I come running over, Ken, and I can see that it's buried deep in the side of the head and it's past the barb. And the camera guy, the producer, comes running over. He goes, "We got to go to the hospital." And this kid goes, "I hate hospitals. I'm afraid of hospitals. Do not take me to a hospital. Please, let's not go to a hospital." The guide is like, "Well, let's try to take the hook out." But I was the guy with the string trick. And I took the braid and I'm like, I know what to do. I've just never done it to somebody with a hook in the temple and a big giant barb for a shark. I go, I don't know what's going to come out. I'm not good with this. Like, I don't want to kill this kid with the string trick. But they're like, he goes, "Please just do it. Please just do it." He goes, "I don't want to go to the hospital." And in the heat of the moment, I just put the hook down, took the braid in, and I popped it. And he goes, "Get it out of me." And by then it was already out. You know how great the string trick is. Like, if you do it just right, even that big giant shark barb, it slides out like a needle. It just slides out like you're pulling a needle out of someone's head versus a shark hook. And he goes, "Get it out of me." And the producer goes, "Dude, it's already out." And he feels over there, and the popper is no longer there. There's just a little piece of blood. That's all it was, just a little bit of blood. But he feels the side of his head right where the temple is, and he's like, "Oh my gosh." And the only thing that I regret was we didn't have any of that on camera, because the producer goes, "ESPN doesn't want blood. Like, we don't do blood." That's like all cameras go down. Nobody filmed nowadays. As you know, social media, man, cameras roll for everything. Back then, there was that discernment, where they put the camera down, and so we put the cameras down, and to this day, I wish any of that footage would have been something that would have been in the archives of, Outgoing Coastal or Guide's Eyes.
That would have been seen millions and millions of times.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing. I got a question. We got to wrap it up. Can you think of any iconic footage that you remember for hooks?
Hmm.
Because I'm still looking for this piece of the podcast, and I'm looking for something that resonates in your head, something that you've ever seen in all your life, where you're like, that was truly caught on camera, someone getting hooked. Because I'm still wide open on this one. I can't come to mind to think of one, and maybe you know of one. Anybody ever hooking anybody that you saw on camera where you went, it made you go, "Ow," or "That's gotta hurt," or "Ooh"?
I've never thought about that. And to your point earlier about a lot of these folks not wanting to show the blood, maybe that's why I haven't seen a lot of that.
Yeah,
Um,
it got cut on the editing floor, right?
yeah, probably so. Or whenever somebody gets hooked, that's embarrassing for somebody.
Hmm.
It means somebody screwed up.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I'll, but I wonder if, to me, the funny ones would be when somebody sits on a hook or something like that. You know, some of those unforced errors.
Yeah.
I wonder if something like that. That'd be
Yeah.
hilarious.
I got to do some homework on it, but man, I have had a great time. I'm watching the clock, and we have gone way longer than I thought we would. But this is exactly what I expected, and you are coming back because I owe you an answer, and I'm not going to give it to
I'm looking
you
forward
off
to that.
camera. But now I got to think about the one that got away, because it's truly, there's one big one out there, and I know I'm going to be like, yeah, that was it, and it's going to be a good question, good question for me to revisit with you on our next podcast, if you don't mind coming back.
I'd be honored. I think you're going to be able to find a lot of better guests than me, but I would be honored, and I look forward to hearing your answer
I
on that.
disagree. You're a great guest. You are a reason again why I did the podcast. I knew early on, right off the bat, I'm like, thank you for helping me put the set together, well, through the camera lens, and you've just been a great mentor, Ken, and I appreciate it
Oh,
so
without
much,
a doubt.
because watching people, they were so kind on Bass After Dark. People were commenting on our shows, and encouraging, like you had said, Byron's one day gonna have a podcast, and everybody chimed in on your chat and said, boy, you sure would be great to have one. So it was this perfect storm of you really, really driving it. And I can't thank you enough, Ken. I really can't. I'm indebted to you for this happening.
Hey, no, thank you, because now it's another great podcast I can watch. Fishtails, Byron Velvick. Can't miss that.
Yeah, it's true. You might suffer through some of my guests, though. You'll be like, yeah, don't have him on. I'll have to
Well,
work on a
there's,
list and be like, the approval. Ken, is this one good? No, you don't want to talk to them. Okay, good.
no,
'Cause-
that's part of the fun too, because you know, as you're going to find out in the podcast world, usually you get to pick your friends, and but sometimes, maybe you're going to be interviewing somebody you don't know really well, and
Mhm.
at the end of that show, you're going to say, "Hey, I'm not sure I like this person."
Have you had that?
Yeah, Oh
Okay.
yeah.
I won't ask
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Don't name names. I'm just curious if you've had that scenario where you're like at the end of the time with them, because this is a great medium. Like I like the fact that we sit and we talk to each other because we don't get this one-on-one time. And granted, it's recorded and people get to listen to it and people get to listen to it on the drive to work or watch it like they're watching it now. But to me, it's like, wow, I get to catch up with people like you that have been so inspirational, good friends, and lots of stories to share. And I'm glad we're sharing them together, like the world record bass story is being shared here versus just you and I in a bar, one day after the show and saying, "Man, I wish somebody would have recorded this because I didn't know any of this." So those are the reasons why I think this podcast is gonna be a lot of fun. Is we get to share this moment together and not have the distraction of cell phones and texts. And my daughter out there, I can hear her through the door right now. Everything else that happens, but it's just mano a mano, you and me, one on one.
And you bring out, I think, the best in people. You're a great conversationalist. You're so smart. You ask good questions. You make it look so easy, and it's not.
I don't know about
It's
that.
not. You make it look so easy.
Well, I'm trying. I'm still learning. This thing will look a lot different eventually, I imagine. But you're helping me with it. Thank you all the time, Ken. And man, this is it. It's a wrap on one of the very first episodes of Fish Tales with my dear friend and mentor and the person that got me into this whole thing. So thank you for inspiring me, Ken. I really do want to sincerely thank you.
Honored to be your friend. Honored to be on one of the first episodes of Fish Tales. Thank you, Byron.
Thanks, Ken. Have a good night.
Fish Tales has been brought to you by Livingston Lures. Learn more at livingstonlures.com. Fish Tales is also supported by these fine sponsors: Trica Fishing, Mercury Outboards, and Camus Boats.